you continue to suffer from what is called ethnocide. Ethnocide is the twin sister of genocide. It is the deliberate destruction of ancestral and cultural identities while keeping the physical body alive. It is the essence of dehumanization, of what we call chattelization or chattel enslavement. It is a crime against humanity that has no statute of limitations. This is important to the reparations movement because the principal objection to reparations has been what they call the intertemporal rule, which is the idea that the crime, in this case, slavery, or the slave trade, I'll get to that in a moment, that it was illegal at the time that it was conducted. A lot of time and energy has been put into that, answering that question and that debate. And now, every fair-minded person who has reviewed all the research can conclusively say that it was illegal at the time by both church canon law and by various African law and European law. That's no longer a question. But I bring this up because another obstacle to reparations has been proving that a specific harm that was done during the period of enslavement continues today. And that was a simple exercise to show that what were known as the slave codes, the black codes, the Negro codes that were codified in Barbados and spread throughout the Atlantic, that traded or substituted trademarks like black, slave, Negro for our actual maternal and paternal ancestry is part of state-sanctioned ethnocide, the deliberate destruction so that you would not know your name, not be able to speak your language, not know your culture, and not know where you come from. And that continues today, whether it's the United States or Brazil. But because of the miracle of the African ancestry genetic testing, it is now possible to overcome 6, 7, 8 or more generations of ethnocide and reclaim or restore your ancestral lineage. This is the foundation and the priority of true reparations. This is before we talk about unpaid labor. This is before we talk about the effects of post-enslavement racial discrimination. This is the first harm in the priority of the reparations movement. And it took us a lot of time to realize this in the reparations movement. Now, since I don't have a lot of time, I want to get to the next important subject, which is, it's important to say who exactly started what we call the transatlantic slave trade and when. So by a show of hands in the audience, Raise your hand if you can name the person who started it and the date that it was started, because these are historical facts. And if we're going to tell the story, we have to tell the story from the beginning. And if we don't tell the story from the beginning, we're not going to be able to understand it properly. There is an actual start date, and there is an actual person that is responsible for all of the trafficking of people from the continent of Africa. Here is the answer. Pope Nicholas V, on June 18, 1452, issued the apostolic edict called the Dum Diversas. It is a document by the Pope that gives authority to the King of Portugal to invade, fight, conquer, subjugate, and reduce to perpetual servitude the Saracens and pagans. Those were colloquial terms to refer to anyone that was not a member of the church or a believer in Jesus Christ. It was a declaration of total war. It's a document. You can read it. Without this document, the King of Portugal and no other European nation has the authority to invade these foreign territories and wage war. So it's important that we stop talking about the transatlantic slave trade and call it what it really was: a war, a military invasion planned and authorized by the Catholic Church and conducted initially by the Military Order of Jesus Christ, headquartered in Tomar, Portugal. Now, the Catholic Church proceeded to issue what are called Acentos, monopoly war contracts, that gave the exclusive right first to Portugal, then to the Genoese, then to the Dutch and other private merchants, then to the French, then to the Spanish, then to the British, including the British 13 colonies. These were war contracts that laid down the terms for the invasions and the profit sharing. And according to these contracts, the Catholic Church received 50% of the profits, and the nation that held the contracts received the other 50%, which means throughout the entire war, Dum Diversas War, misnamed the Transatlantic slave trade, the Catholic Church was the single greatest profiteer. This is important because once we internalize these historical facts, we will no longer speak of slaves that were traded. We will speak of prisoners of war that were trafficked. And when it comes to reparations, and when it comes to not the spiritual, moral, and historic argument, but the legal argument, that is now covered by the Geneva Convention, which all the nations are signatory to, including the Holy See, the Vatican, the Catholic Church. And if we are looking for legal arguments to compel the guilty or enslaving, or what the Geneva Convention calls the detaining powers, then we have to use this framework. And that means that the estimated 100 million people of African descent in Brazil, the largest group of Afro-descendants on the planet, are, according to the Geneva Convention, their status is still considered prisoners of war until, and now I'm quoting from the convention, their final release and repatriation. This is, or should be, the primary narrative of the global African reparations movement.